The Last Billion. A story by Jens Brandes. When the world population began to shrink for the first time in millennia, Anna was 8 years old. She only understood that the news talked more about decline than anything else. The city under the dome. 30 years later, Anna lived in New Vienna, a city under glass. The dome was made of self-healing composite material, covered with a network of light-collecting fibers that captured every sunbeam and directed it into the growth terraces. The city was a promise. Complete recycling. Artificial food production, hardly any waste, but instead algae tanks, mushroom farms, and fields of genetically modified grains growing in vertical gardens. New Vienna was humanity's answer to what had long begun, the quiet collapse. Anna worked at the Demography Council, an agency that had once been called the Statistical Office until numbers became questions of survival. She observed curves that no one wanted to see anymore. Fertility rates, average age, resource forecasts. The lines were all bent downwards or upwards when it came to age. The world had reached its population peak in the middle of the 21st century and had since shrunk like a balloon with a tiny but steady leak. The arithmetic errors of hope Anna's grandmother had always said, "Statistics don't lie, but they don't tell stories either." The old models had predicted that the population could drop to 8 billion by the year 2100, later down to 1 billion sometime in the 23rd century. What no one had accounted for were the chain reactions. Resource wars over rare earths, the unequal consequences of the climate crisis, the collapse of entire education systems as one state after another went bankrupt. As several large grain belts lost 2 harvest years in a row almost simultaneously, the world economy tipped over like an overheated engine. They responded with dome cities, with extreme efficiency, with automated factories where only a few people worked. Machines could take over a lot, just not the one job that Anna stared at daily: to be new people. A life without children. Anna was 38, single, and had a long list of good reasons not to have a child. Housing was scarce, childcare expensive, career paths fragile, and no one knew how stable the dome systems would be in 30 years. In her models, Anna saw that millions of others thought the same way. The decision of each individual resulted, when totaled, in a line on her screen that fell a little further year by year. Adjustment of social norms, the literature called it. Growing up in a society where 1 child is normal and 2 is already a lot, one doesn't even think about 3. Prenatalist programs came and went with bonus points, tax breaks, promises of housing. The effects were short-lived, shallow, and dissipated again. What remained was a silent consensus. It was reasonable not to have children. The space program. One Wednesday morning, Anna received an invitation that did not sound reasonable. Subject: Selection Process Origin. Origin was one of those projects that were gossiped about in bars at night. A revival of the great space programs, this time not to Mars, but to O'Neill habitats in sun-synchronous orbit. Officially, the purpose was scientific and economic. New raw material sources, new production chains, new markets. Unofficially, everyone whispered the same word: diversification. Humanity had become genetically remarkably homogeneous. Mass migrations of the 21st century and the relative isolation of the dome cities had mixed cultures, but the effective population size was shrinking. A major outbreak of a new disease could depopulate entire continents in a few years if vaccine development did not keep pace. And with every lost school, every closed laboratory, it became harder to deliver the necessary innovations on time. The idea of origin, separate, largely autonomous populations in space under very different selection pressures. Isolation not as an accident, but as a plan, to allow new branches to emerge from the human tree. The conversation. At the selection center, Anna met Dr. Malik, an anthropobiologist with gray temples and tired eyes. "You have been observing the decline for 15 years, he said without preamble. "You know where this is leading." "To fewer people," Anna replied. "Too little to support the system that nourishes us." Malik nodded. "It takes billions to sustain the infrastructure that can produce a single Einstein," he said. "And we are moving towards hundreds of millions." He showed her a simulation, a world with 900 million inhabitants, scattered in dome cities, separated by devastated zones and unstable seas. The curve of technical complexity fell faster than that of the population. "We are not just losing people," Malik said quietly. "We are losing degrees of freedom." "And you think space spheres in orbit will solve that?" Anna asked. "No," he said. "But they extend the time in which we can make decisions." He tapped on a second scenario, the same starting point, but with 5 largely isolated orbital habitats, each with 200,000 people with slightly different atmospheres, gravities, and radiation levels. "In 1,000 years, they will still be biologically human," Malik said. "But their immune profiles, their metabolism, perhaps even their reproductive biology will be different." "Different bird species," Anna murmured, recalling a metaphor she had read in an old article. "Related species," Malik corrected. "When a pandemic hits a population, we no longer automatically affect everyone. Diversification instead of monoculture." An immoral offer. The invitation contained more than just a job. Anna was to become part of the founding population of Origin 3, a habitat at the Lagrange point between Earth and the Moon. But above all, it contained a condition that was not in the official text, but in the confidential appendices. She would be required to have at least 1 child. "We're not just looking for scientists and statisticians," Malik explained. "We are looking for people who are willing to pay the price for a future they will not experience." Anna thought of the dome city, the data streams, her quiet apartment, with the synthetic view of a forest that no longer existed outside. She thought of her life so far, which had consisted of watching humanity slowly disappear and providing numbers about it. "What if all of this fails?" she asked. "Early colonies often failed. Diseases, scarcity, conflicts." "Then it would be another failed experiment," Malik replied. "The Earth was also just an experiment that will eventually end. The question is, do we let it bleed out quietly, or do we allow for divergences?" Decision. In the nights that followed, Anna often sat on the observation platform of the city, directly beneath the dome skin. Outside lay the old world, scarred hills, flooded lowlands, remnants of highways that no longer saw any traffic. The sky had surprisingly cleared since the industries had been relocated from the atmosphere to the orbital factories. Stars were visible again, and it was known that some of these points of light had since been flanked by human-made objects. Most people did not long for them. "The Earth is still the most beautiful place," one of the old spaceflight critics had once said. "Even exhausted." Anna agreed, but she also saw the numbers. In her models, Homo sapiens was not an immortal hero, but an episode. Perhaps, she thought, the task was not to endlessly prolong this episode, but to ensure that something new emerged from it. On the day of the decision, she opened the invitation again. She electronically signed and sent off the document. Origin 3. Years later, in the artificial twilight of the habitat, Anna stood at a panoramic window. Beneath her stretched the ring of the O'Neill cylinder, equipped with terraces, lakes, and forests, whose trees were bred for the lower gravity. The rotation created a felt weight. The ground pulled them outward. The sky was the inner wall full of landscape that curved until it disappeared in the haze. Through the radiation shields, she saw the Earth, smaller, paler, but still blue. Next to her, a small boy held her hand. He was 4 years old, with dark eyes in which the reflections of two worlds danced. "Did you used to be down there?" he asked. Anna nodded. "Yes, there are grasses that flatten under real rain, and stones that smell of heat when the sun has shone on them for a long time." "Then let's go there," he said determinedly. She smiled sadly. "Maybe you, maybe your children." In the background, quiet alarms and status displays ran, like the heartbeat of the station. There were always problems. Microfractures in the shell, an unstable bacterial ecosystem in the water purifiers, political tensions between the habitats and the remaining states on Earth. Humanity had not left its conflicts in space, but it had found ways to spread them over greater distances. Epilogue. Beyond 10,000 years millennia later, no one would remember Anna. In historical simulations, her name might appear once as a data entry, as one of tens of thousands of pioneer figures. More importantly, there would be beings who looked back on that time and said, "At that time, one kind of human ended, and others began." They would live under different skies, with slightly different bones, different lungs, different concepts of home. For them, Earth would be a myth, an origin, not a center. Homo sapiens might not have had another 10,000 years. But the story that began with him had found ways to fill the space he left behind.